on now and look at all 4 teams that took part in the Rugby Championship and kind of where they stand now that Rugby Championship 2021 is over, and we're just over the mark in terms of the 2 years out from the World Cup kind of state of affairs. So all of these teams will be taking stock before they come north now as well, and obviously some have more positives to glean, others have more work-ons, and we're going to look at each of the teams, and we're going to start with the winners for this year, which are the mighty All Blacks. And the question we're asking is, are they back to their best? Because at times this year they've definitely looked it, way going back to the 2015 vintage is when I think of the indomitable All Blacks as probably the best rugby team I've ever seen take the field in my opinion. But like, they've been getting close, some of those Bledisloe victories against what we now know is a very competent and well kitted out Wallaby side. And even the early season going, what they did to Fiji, who we know are a much improved and very defensively robust side. Not that you'd know it when the All Blacks are in town, because they'll put scores up on anyone. So yeah, they returned to, as you were highlighting at the beginning of the season, and you were highlighting even before the season, the talk out of Foster was skills, discipline, skill set, discipline, a renewed focus after the doldrums of the Tri-Nations last year, really, and even going back further than that, when they the defeat to the Pumas is one that will still weigh heavy on them. Is like, how did that happen? We only scored 15 points. We got lost by 10.
Couldn't get a thing off against the defence. That's the issue. Yeah,
exactly. So considering where they were this time last year in terms of taking stock post tournament, they're in a much better place on a macro scale. They will be vexed by the fact that they are champions, but they briefly touched that number 1 spot that they love to hold on to, and they were close to that Grand Slam that's very elusive, and both of those things were denied by their old rivals, the Springboks.
The Grand Slam is one that for whatever reason isn't factored in as an achievement from an All Black team or fans perspective, but I know that the number 1 ranking is something that they care about. Even going back to McCaw's days,
that's where they want to be.
Yeah, he was always I remember when they had a loss, I think it was in 2009 against the Boks, to lose the ranking. It was gone again. They were particularly annoyed by that. And it was something that ate away at them, and I dare say that has held true even to these times. It's a funny one to evaluate. I mean, I've been very, very positive on them all year. I think they will definitely be given pause by what's gone on the last 2 weeks, and it just puts into context some of the improvements they have and haven't made. The off-season talk was great. They've become about they've become about skill sets. They've become about offense. They've become about just striking, and they do look authentically like an All Black team, which they didn't at times over the last few years. They've looked a lot more Northern Hemisphere-y, a lot more Springboky. They've been a lot more forward oriented,
heavy forward oriented, back in
their line out, back in their scrum at times, back in their physicality at times. And this year they look much surer to their own identity, and it showed at the weekend in terms of just their ability to strike. They were not in that game for large periods, and yet they managed to find 3 tries. You have Bowden Barrett out there just making things happen from nothing. Rico Ioane, they have all of their sharpest offensive operators out there. But then there are some concerns as well. I mean, I'd look back to the last 2 weeks and just how starkly they suffered in the contact area. Their line out hung with the Springboks for 40 minutes of the 2 tests at the opening 40 minutes, and then it kind of didn't anymore. It became much
defensive Weber try aside, but
it became a much looser entity, and they lost that battle.
They love to strike off line out as well in terms of their set piece offense. They kind of even prefer line out sometimes to scrum, just in terms of their surety from it and the varied options they can do from it in terms of going to the back. And you remove that tool from them, they become a little bit looser for sure.
So I'm not quite sure where I stand on it. Like, there was obviously the other issue was that it looked like they'd resolved their centre issues. Havili had the absolute man in this tournament, and he was one of the players
before it in that Pacific and the Fiji games and the Tonga games,
the Crusaders jersey. Ever since he switched to 12, hasn't put a foot wrong until 2 weeks ago.
He ran into a Delinde shaped brick alive. But I don't think they should be going too remiss on that. I actually think I was encouraged by his showing in the second test, because even in a game that they ultimately lost, I thought he actually improved in terms of he wasn't quite as shocked, and he still got some plays off. But the physical matchup is not great in the if he just runs chest to chest with Delinde, he goes backwards for sure. But he's still the mould of centre, more so than like sticking Le Mappe back in there perhaps just to try and combat Delinde. the distribution then and the width doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Like Havili gave them what they had been missing in that centre, and now it affords them the opportunity to rotate either Rico for the extra speed for 13, or you can push him out to the wing and bring Anton Leonard-Brown in.
Rico has to be in that side one position or another because his offensive instincts are excellent. Severis is just a lethal finisher on one wing. Like they have lots and lots of quality to them.
Yeah.
They have lots and lots of positives, mostly in that back line. I think you're right to say. But I would look to the forward pack, and I'd be a little bit concerned. You know, the absence of Sam Whitelock obviously is big.
And actually Aaron Smith. Actually, but in both of their absences, there was good minutes for Tui Poladu, for Barrett, for Retallick returning from overseas as well.
Yeah.
And similarly, Weber and TJ both got starts, both got more minutes than they're used to because those two are guys that will be straight back in there. And the evidence of that line out in terms of going around, like Sam Whitelock's a guy that when your line out is starting to be figured out, you do want someone like that in there.
And he will come back in, and Aaron Smith will make loads of difference to the multi-phase, and that you'd be confident of the back line to get things right. But in terms of like the bar for this team is incredibly high, and as much as they've made huge positive strides this year, they're still going to have pressure on them until they are.
When your last game is a loss and you're not on the top of the world, that's in the All Black books. That's a lot to be stewing on, you know. Yeah. And it's just it means there are some doubts, some questions thrown into an otherwise impeccable season up to that point. Can't be overstated that like they were.
No, but it's true, and you would say that like. This was definitely their toughest test, and I would just be a little concerned about the forward pack in general, and this is probably just a consequence of them putting the emphasis in the right places and the sort of unintended consequences of that, and shouldn't be too bad an adjustment. But they went through the season looking imperious at the line out and then got done at the line out. Their scrum wasn't really a massive factor in those Wallaby games. They had just managed those games so well, and they looked so much smarter than the Wallabies in those games that they managed
to make coming on when they were already 18 points
exactly
ahead.
That was kind of part of it, and then they were managing those quick strikes, and they just didn't let the Wallabies get on top of them in that area. But in the box it all came to a head, and I think the most stark thing that was going on was just the sheer lack, the physical deficit that they were on in that game was stark, and they couldn't get anything going on the breakdown on either side of the ball, apart from really Artie Savia and at times Blackadder as well, who I thought was very positive and a great find for the season.
True.
But actually those locks you were citing, like Tui Poladu, who had such a great year last year when they were being physical, like he was one of their better performers, and that was like his breakthrough year, and yet this year he might have fallen back behind Barrett. Barrett's still a very fine player, but Brodie Retallick was slow to adjust coming back in, and there's no question that he was outplayed the last couple of weeks by his opposite numbers in green,
and by Daragh and the like.
So it's I think it's kind of put them in an odd place, and you've cited their issues of props before. Like they're still an All Black team. They're still true to their identity. They still take tries like no other team in the world.
Bundles of talent, like in terms of putting a 31-man squad to go to a World Cup, like they could probably pick 3 top level ones to go and compete at the World Cup. The only area, as I had highlighted, is prop, where you're looking at like top quality options pretty much across the board, and you're right to say like the back row probably should be working a little harder collectively when they're faced with an onslaught like that Bok thing, but in general, as far as personnel, they still have lots of good guys. Like Dalton Papali'i was in there, we haven't seen him the last few weeks. A lot of really good quality there. The place is prop. That's the one area that I'm looking at, and it's like they don't quite have, like there's no Taniela Tupou like the Wallabies have, like a breakout star, a tight head. There's certainly no like well the Boks have an embarrassment of riches. They are the best propping country in terms of that, like producing just top level props, and you can go on either side of the scrum and being destructive. They don't like guys like Moody still out there who like was struggling with that Bok pack, but his form was dictating that he go in there because he scrummaged very well against the Pumas and against the Wallabies. But it's like
George Bauer for me is the form
he is the fine
in the country, and he's been very good, and I think like in moments Nepolala's looked okay as well. I would take your point that I think that the props are an issue for them, but even just broader, is there a massive adjustment that has to be made to get them, like as much as you can talk about the depth in the country and how they can send 3 teams to the World Cup, like do they have a forward pack that can hang with the Springboks? I mean, what's encouraging is that they can get dominated by that much and still win one, lose one. It's all very tight, so you would think if they can maintain the sort of the capacity to strike that they have at the moment, that just a little bit more parity in the forward pack, but mostly making it level and certainly not being dominated in the way that they were in moments over the last 2 weeks, what do they have to do to get to that level? Are there guys you'd be concerned about from a personnel point of view, or is it just a point of like maybe just focus the emphasis lens in the off season on a slightly different direction this year, while maintaining the identity of the team, which they seem to have rediscovered?
Yeah, possibly a little boot camp for the front rows and for the back rows in terms of that Springbok game. That big Springbok test for sure is one that is still vexing for them. Like they
have similar problems against the likes of England away though. Like they will, like Springboks is the toughest they come. There's no doubt up front, but they will. Northern Hemisphere packs are beefy as well, and at the moment that like they looked a little physically shocked in those two games.
Sure. As compared to a tempo that the Wallabies played, that they were just very inviting. Even though there are physical players in the Wallabies too, but it was just an open style of game that they're more comfortable in. When it's stop start and when there are Box going down for an icing and then we're back up for a maul and back up for a scrum, it does irk the All Blacks visibly. You can see that in them. And then if they're a little bit cold, they will be caught out in the contact. They are smaller guys. Like it's like they produce a lot of really big powerful athletes, but not quite the explosive kind of front row union that you tend to see. You see more kind of guys locking that down. You don't see massive power athletes.
Ufa Tuangafasi has been kind of like that, but he got absolutely smashed by Vincent Koch at one point in the week. And there's an element to which the Springboks are just freakish in that department. You can only compete with them so much.
True.
But I think it's an interesting dilemma for Foster going forward, because he knows, like you were signing that 2015 team, like that was still a team that had, a Retallick and Whitelock at the peak of their powers, that had Kieran Reid making all kinds of plays from 8, but they were tough defensively, and they had a Dan Carter at 10 as well as a Bowden Barrett to come in, so to manage their way around the field a little bit more. So they're a little imbalanced at the moment, but I think imbalanced probably in the right direction. And it's just a question of adding the fundamental elements.
Progress has been the main buzzword this season. They've gone back to their roots, and it's paid all kinds of dividends, and only a smidge of gloss knocked off by those pesky Boks coming back to rain on their parade a little bit, but they were still crowned champions with a week to go. Won the 100th test, which they were bigging up from season's beginning as well, and won everything else on the way there. Led a slow sweep, all of that done. So in general they still are a mighty force. Debatable whether they're number one in the world. It depends what side of the what side of the Indian Ocean you're on, probably dictates how you feel about that one. But they are still in a very, very healthy place. They are champions of the Rugby Championship, which can't be overstated. Like that's a bloody good achievement, and they're a scary proposition for anyone.
Yeah, indeed, and it'll be a fun northern tour for them as well. It'll be a fun challenge for them to round out the season as well. Obviously, we're going to be one of the sides they're rocking up to in Dublin, and that'll be an interesting challenge as well. What goes on at the line out there against what from our point of view, I think it's fair. I think it's fair to say we were the best pack in the Six Nations if we can maintain that form and then bring it in.
Change in a few months.
That'll be a challenge in and of itself, and I think we might learn a little bit more about the All Blacks going away to a hostile atmosphere. If they can own the set piece and own the forward pack there, then you've probably got nothing to worry about. It was just a case of the Springboks being elite on that day, and a few adjustments here or there could change it.
Sure.
But that'll be there's still a few question marks, but overall, they're currently sitting comfortably in A grade for the improvements. I mean, compared to 12 months ago, I mean, Foster's done a great job.
Night and day. Fozzie Bear definitely in good stead, and he is the man to take them forward as we reach kind of the business end. What really is the World Cup cycle is from here out, because with Lions tours in the rear view mirror, all of that stuff is done.
This time 4 years ago, Alistair Coetzee was on his last legs, but was still in charge of the Springboks.
That's right. So a lot can change in that little window. But for the All Blacks, I think sticking with Foster and sticking with
was what
they're doing. It's dead right.
He was talking good sense in the off season, and they've backed it up on the pitch. And New Zealand fans who are grumpy with him are just being perhaps a little impatient, because I think it's clear from our point of view that they have made some brilliant adjustments and are playing some great rugby.
If they were to meet the 2019 or 2020 All Blacks on the field, they'd whoop them. That's
I would agree. I think that's right.
So it's progress. It's definitely progress for the All Blacks, and congratulations, champions.
Absolutely. What else is new? Thanks for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed that video, please be sure to like and subscribe. And hey, if you have an opinion of your own, if you disagree with what we're saying, leave a comment down below. We might just get back to you.